Please pray with me. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. The month of January is a month that has a lot of calls in it, a lot of people waiting for the call. You see this particularly with football teams. Right now there's a lot of people sitting by their desks, some even this very morning, waiting to see if the call's going to come, if the phone's going to ring, right? The University of Alabama lost a beloved football coach, and before we even got to Sunday, somebody had gotten the call, and is the new coach there now. The New England Patriots are extending a call. The Falcons are looking for whom to call. The Panthers are trying to find out who to call. There's people waiting for calls all over. You may be waiting for a call. In fact, your phone might be ringing right now. Put it on silence. You're in church for a little bit here. But in January, there's a lot of stories of the call coming through. And that's true in the Bible as well. In the Bible, as we read the stories of the life of Jesus, starting with the beginning of the Gospels, we often come at this point to the stories of the call of the disciples. And we'll get these stories on multiple Sundays in January. This year we're reading them in the Gospel of John, and it shows up a lot. In John's Gospel, they're often context in a particular phrase, and the phrase is, come and see. John uses the phrase, come and see, so much that I think it's epigrammatic for John. Listen to some of them. Here in the first chapter, you find the disciples saying it to each other as they encounter Jesus by the Sea of Galilee here. And then Philip will say to his friends, come and see. Philip will say it to Nathanael. Andrew will say it to Peter, come and see. It's in John 1:39. He said to them, come and see. Jesus himself says it to them, and they came and saw where he was saying. And then in the fourth gospel, in the fourth chapter of John, when Jesus encounters the Samaritan woman at the well, after their conversation, she goes to her village, the Samaritan village, and says to them, come and see a man who has told me everything I've ever done. Can he be the Messiah? And then in the 11th chapter, when Jesus goes to raise Lazarus from the dead, he arrives at the home of Lazarus, and he's already died, and he's there visiting with the grieving family, and he says to them, where have you placed his body? And they say to him, Lord, come and see. And it goes on until we get to the 20th chapter, the resurrection chapter in the gospel. Nicodemus is also in chapter 3, one who comes at night to see Jesus. And in chapter 20, Mary Magdalene, you may remember it says, early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had not been removed. She came and she saw now. And then when the two other disciples come, Peter and the other disciple come running when she tells them, they reach the tomb and they look in. Verse 8, then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. They came and they saw. It's a really important phrase for the Gospel of John, and I think it encapsulates the sense of God's call in their lives. God is calling them into faith, and their job is to see, to witness it. They're bearing witness. How often it is that faithfulness looks like observing. How often responding to God's call looks like witnessing before we have understanding. They're coming and seeing even before they believe. And that's present in a lot of stories from the Bible, and especially this month. God is inviting us. The whole experience of call, I think, seems to beg the question of belief in God. Do you have to believe in God before you experience God's call? Not necessarily, according to the Bible. Or even more strongly here in John's gospel, no, you do not have to believe in God before you experience God's call. People experience that call before they're at belief. Very often I'll find that people will report an experience or an awareness of being called into a particular task, called in even into a particular relationship before they have a conscious acknowledgement of belief in a deity. And you've heard me talk about this before. People not knowing the vocabulary yet or not being comfortable with it will say something to me like, I heard Terry's appeal about providing those canned goods for N68 hours of hunger. And something told me to get out there and bring in 4 bags. That wasn't something, that was God. But we say something because we don't yet know how to say, God was calling me. You've heard me speak of this before, and you heard Pastor John Ryder speak of it when he read the story about Samuel, how Samuel as a boy is already at work in the temple, and he has the experience of something calling him, and it's God. But it takes him a while to understand that. People will have the experience of kindness, an experience of an opportunity to serve. They'll have the experience of a certain role that they should play, and that's an experience of an encounter with God even before they're able to identify it that way. These experiences come sometimes prior to awareness of a sense in the existence of or a relationship with God. I think it's kind of like falling in love. If you've ever had the experience of falling in love, you're with somebody and you're seeing them and you're in relationship with them more and you're engaged with them in life, and all of a sudden you think to yourself, I think I may be in love with this person. The experience precedes our being able to identify it. Now, Nathanael is called by Jesus, and Jesus says to him, come and see, and he responds to it. He does that before he acknowledges that God is present in that. He responds to Jesus saying, come and see, before later in the text he acknowledges the identity of Jesus as Messiah. And I often have people report the exact opposite experience. Like Samuel, they're serving already and they're committed to it. He's committed by his whole family to service in the temple before he's ever encountered God's call. He hears the voice of God calling him, waking him from sleep before he understands what it is. You get that? He's having this encounter with God before he understands that it's an encounter from God. He hears the voice of God calling him, waking him, and he thinks it's Eli down the hall. He keeps getting up and going down the hall and saying, Eli, were you calling me? The second time we hear it in the story, I want to holler out, Samuel, it's not Eli, it's God, wake up. The faith journey is not only discerning what we are called to do, but the faith journey is discerning the experience, the voice, the call of God encountering us as God, discerning that that experience is God encountering us. One of my privileges, and I know it's true also with Nicole and John and Ken, one of our privileges as pastors is to be invited by people seriously and often privately, typically privately, to talk with them about their lack of faith. Somebody will want to come and talk with us one-on-one, and very typically it's in the context of wanting to keep integrity with us. And the conversation will go something like, you know, John, I love being a part of the church. I love the fellowship of the community, and I love a lot of the things that the church does and that we share together. But I don't embrace a belief in a divine being. I don't embrace a belief in a living God, and I just needed to tell you that. Or it may be somebody in the last stages of their life saying, John, I'm just never clear that I've actually had that experience with God. Or it may be somebody young in high school or college saying, Pastor John, I have to tell you this, but I don't believe or have faith in the things that the church does. And I find those conversations precious. They're important to me, all right? And when I have them, I'm often inclined to say, well, tell me this. Do you believe in beauty? Yes, they'll always say, yes, I believe in beauty, and I'll try to get them to define beauty for me. So you believe in beauty, and how is your understanding of beauty different than my understanding, how are they alike? Then I'll say, well, if we believe in beauty together, do you believe in wonder? Do you believe that you ever had the experience of astonishment or even seeing something and just wondering about how it could be? You push a little bit, yes, I believe in wonder. Well, then I'll say, do you believe in mystery? Do you believe in mystery? See, it's very hard to say you don't believe in mystery because it's such an arrogant thing to say. Because the opposite is to say, no mystery for me, I understand everything, right? So I always have to say, I acknowledge mystery. There's mystery in the world and profound mystery at that. And then sometimes I'll say, well, how about hope? Do you believe in hope? They'll say, sure, I know what it means to hope in something. Well, how about faith? I'm not sure there that I believe in faith. And I'll hold up a glass of water or tea and say, well, I have faith that if I let go of this glass, it's going to fall to the floor. And they'll say, well, that's not faith, that's just experience based on reason. And I'll say, what is faith but experience based on reason? And all of a sudden we're traveling there too. And then I'll say to them, well, how about love? Do you believe in love? Yes, they'll say, I know the experience of love, I believe in love. So let me understand this. You believe in beauty, you believe in wonder, you believe in mystery, you believe in hope, you believe in love, you believe in faith. What is it you don't believe in? My friend Ron Gilreath, who's a retired pastor now outside of Atlanta, tells the story of having a good friend in his congregation who's agnostic and said regularly to Ron, I need you to understand I'm not a believer, but I love being involved in this community with you, and I love the compassionate work that you do together. And Ron said, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, brother. And they signed up together to work at the church's homeless shelter, which is something they opened at that church when the weather got cold outside, and they opened up their gym with cots for homeless people to come and be sheltered in that night. And the volunteers would take turns, shifts of about 3 hours, being in the room and monitoring it, as a responsible party for the shared space they were in together. And Ron's friend took the first watch, and he was supposed to wake Ron up at 3 a.m. And Ron said at 3 o'clock he felt a gentle tug on his shoulder and his friend saying quietly, Ron, it's time for you to take the shift. And I don't know, Ron, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but sitting there in that room with those people in the silence, I think Jesus Christ is in there. If you believe in beauty and wonder, if you hang around with mystery, if you believe in physics and the experience of reason and science helping us to understand processes in the world, if you believe in faith and hope, you just believe in those things, and sooner or later, Jesus is going to show up for you. The thing that follows Jesus' actions of call in this story is the wedding at Cana story. That's where he turns the water into wine. It's a wonderful story, and there's no explanation in it as to how he does the miracle. The first sign, and that's what John calls it, the first sign that Jesus gives, they're just left astonished in wonder, mystery at. No explanation. In 1930, in a famous interview that was run in the Saturday Evening Post, Albert Einstein gave these remarks on his own encounter with mystery. The human mind, Einstein said, no matter how highly trained, cannot grasp the universe. We're in the position of a little child entering a huge library whose walls are covered from the floor to the ceiling with books in many different languages and tongues. The child knows that someone must have written those books. It does not know who or how. It does not understand the language in which they are written. The child notes some kind of plan, a definite plan in the arrangement of the books, a mysterious order, which the child does not understand but dimly can see, suspects. That, said Einstein, it seems to me, is the attitude of the human mind, even the greatest and most cultured human toward God. We see a universe marvelously arranged, obeying certain laws, but we understand the laws only dimly. Our limited minds cannot grasp the mysterious force that sways the constellations. Nathanael is moved by his encounter with Jesus by the end of this passage to a sudden outburst, an outburst of faith that I don't think he's expecting. "Rabbi," he said, "you're the Son of God." And Jesus answers, "Do you now believe because I told you I saw you sitting under the fig tree? You'll see greater things than these." And Jesus said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." Jesus is referencing the story from the Hebrew scriptures of Jacob, who exhausted, who at the end of his rope fell asleep on a rock and in a dream saw angels ascending and ascending. And when he woke, Jacob said, "Surely this is a holy place. Surely the living God is in this place." It's only after his experience that Jacob, in reflection, says, "This was a holy place. The living God was present here." Samuel's experience of call results in this action. Listen clearly and carefully here. This is what he's called to do out of his powerful experience of God's voice calling to him in the night. Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down. And if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" How's that a call for faithfully moving into the year ahead? Go lie down. And if you encounter a call, say, "I'm listening, Lord," and then listen. The disciples are called here in John's gospel. In no way do they understand. At best, they may glimpse a belief here, but they don't understand. Jesus gives them two directives towards faithful living. Follow me and come and see. I was talking to my brother, my pastor brother, at the end of the week, which we're inclined to do because we are hoping that the other one will give us some sermon ideas as you're talking there. And we're usually looking at the same text. And I said to him, "Dan, I'm really engaged with the fact that this phrase, 'come and see,' is there in the Gospel of John over and over and over. It's like I've seen it there before, but I've never seen before the way it so intentionally is repeated from the beginning to the end, to the resurrection. How is it that I could have been doing this ministry thing, studying the Bible every week, talking about it, teaching on it, preaching on it, and have missed this all along?" And he's quiet for a minute, and he said, "Well, maybe you weren't paying attention." Maybe, he said, you were so busy explaining it, you weren't paying attention. Amen.